Time for rolling.
The right targets. That is one trade. T-Tigers is still pretty healthy. Tries to jump in. He finds one. This is a big turnaround for Liberation X. They might get the third. They might find an ace here onto Lost Boytov. Surrey Strike is not enough. The goes down. He might go for Donna Clips. He's going to get one. He's going to get two. Lost Boytov!
Lost Boytov, he does it. He gets the 2 versus 1 turnaround under the turret.
He lives too.
Man is a god. That gauntlet was...
Welcome to Time for Rolling Esports, the weekly podcast that brings you Vainglory Esports. From predictions to recaps and analysis, we present to you the best in professional Vainglory. Now here's your hosts, Endless and Crude. It's
Time for rolling.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's Endless here. Before we get into today's show, I know we're all excited to get into today's show. It's one of the biggest shows we've had. I'm going to tell you about some sponsors and friends of ours over here at Time for Rolling Esports. Really great people. The first group I want to talk about is Mobile Esports. This company is a company that focuses on all things mobile gaming. They run community events, they run tournaments, all based around mobile titles like Critical Ops, Clash Royale, and of course Vainglory. They are just now starting to get into Vainglory. This will be their first tournament on December 9th. It's going to be a small tournament on that Saturday. It's going to be a fun time. We're really excited to get Mobile Esports more involved in Vainglory, as I personally believe Vainglory is one of the biggest mobile titles out there. So make sure you can follow them on Twitter, at esports_mobile, or you can go to their webpage, mobileesports.org. You can check out their webpage. They have a lot of great things there. They're just really great company, and I cannot wait to get them more involved in Vainglory. Of course, on their website, you can find their other tournaments if you are interested in like Critical Ops, Clash Royale, those type of titles. They'll be expanding to other games as well once more. Great mobile titles like maybe Rules of Survival. I know a lot of the Vainglory community right now is playing that game. Another great friend of ours here at Time for Rolling Esports is the North American Champions League. The NACL is one of the best tournaments in the Vainglory community right now, run by some great people. This league has been running for multiple seasons. It has given teams like, of course, Vision Gaming the chance to get their start, to get some attention and a place for them to try to reach that Vainglory 8. So, of course, if you have a team that you think can compete well, maybe go ahead and follow them at NA Champ League, and also you can subscribe to their YouTube and Twitch. Keep up with them there, and maybe you can sign up your team in the future tournaments that will be happening. So NA Champ League, really excited also to be doing a lot of things with them. That is all we have when it comes to sponsors and friends. This episode is going to be awesome. It's going to be long, so let it take it into your weekend if you need to. Maybe space it out a little bit. Don't just binge it in one day. It's going to be a really fun time. A lot of great conversation, all about 5v5 and some speculation. Trying to get that hype ready for December 17th. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 59 of Time for Rolling Esports. On this episode, it is a very special episode, probably the biggest episode we have ever done. We have special guests, but I am joined, as always, with my co-host, Crude Sloth. How's it going?
It's going fantastic. Yes, we do have a pretty awesome podcast here today. We got some special guests.
Star-studded, I would say. Probably the three of the most fantastic people possible. We have Foojee, of course. Foojee is our recurring guest. He has been on the podcast before. Then we have the desk master, I'm going to call him. That would be TastyBacon. And then we have the hype master, probably the most hype caster in Vainglory, Humanist. How about you guys go ahead and say hello?
Hello. Now's when you say hello, Bacon.
Hello.
Just say hello.
Hello. I thought you were doing like a full introduction.
Full-on intro. Like... I was going to give everyone a chance to just say hi. But, so I'm Foojee, or Ben Watley, if you want to know my real name. Most people know me from the Vainglory community, I'm sure, that are listening to this podcast. But prior to Vainglory, since we're here to talk, about 5v5 and all the things, I have a lot of League of Legends background playing that game, even back to beta. And my earliest MOBA experience would have been playing the custom map mode in Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos called Dota back then, before MOBAs became a big thing. So I've been a fan of the genre ever since I was a teenager, and pretty happy to be working on the kind of forefront mobile MOBA Vainglory and really nailing some things down for an exciting 2018.
Hey everyone, I'm TastyBacon, otherwise known as Greg Yetzi. If from the Vainglory community, you probably know me as either a caster or as an analyst on the analyst desk. But prior to Vainglory, just like Ben, I also have a lot of League of Legends experience. I was an amateur League of Legends caster before I got into Vainglory, but I've also played pretty much every MOBA that has existed at some point or another. So I have a lot of experience with the 5v5, different styles of different 5v5 and things of that nature.
That was smooth, Bacon. I guess it's my turn. I'm Humanist. And you guys, if you watch the competitive Vainglory, you would know that I'm one of the casters, one of the play-by-play casters. I've done color casting as well. Try to stick to the play-by-play. I like to bring the hype. I love MOBAs. My first MOBA was Dota. I started playing the game 13 years ago. I wanted to be a professional Dota player. I would say I spent probably close to a couple years trying to achieve that goal, working with a team, creating my own team. It didn't work out for me, but that was a lot of a great experience. I ran Dota tournaments. I did Dota casting, more like amateur and semi-pro level stuff. And then I found Vainglory as like a mobile MOBA, and it was just amazing. And I started playing it, saw that they needed some casters, tried it out, and that was pretty much how it all started there.
Well, while it is probably unfortunate that your Dota career did not work out, I think all of us Vainglory people are kind of glad, because now we get blessed with your voice on most weekends when the season is in. So that is nice to have that. But real quick, I don't know if we want to do a little bit of 5v5 discussion right away. When we're recording this, it is Monday night. They had just released the bracket challenge, Vainglory has. I've been waiting for that. I don't know if anyone real quick wants to maybe call out their first picks for who's going to win, maybe what region real quick before we dive into more of the specific questions. I know Humanist already, I saw his. He's got G2. He's going the EU train.
Yeah. So, look, this is live competition. Anything can happen, and I actually don't think, like, if I was betting a legit amount of my savings on this, I probably wouldn't go with G2. Right. But I'm gonna get behind them, and I'm just gonna ride this hype train all the way through.
Tasty, you cheering for anyone yet?
It's a bold call going for the G2, but Team Kraken definitely, they get my heart says Team Kraken, just because I love that name coming on into the World Championship. But I do think that this World Championship is going to go to either Team Solomid or Cloud9 or Tribe. Sorry, it was Team Solomid I had, actually. It was a really tough matchup when I did my bracket. It was Tribe and Team Solomid, but I gave that one to Tribe. But I do have a Tribe and Cloud9 finals for my bracket that I filled out. So it's kind of the easy way out, a little bit, but I think that's the way it's going to go.
All that matters is the trophies coming back home to NA, so that's all that matters.
That's it. Well, hey, I mean, our headquarters is in North America, right? So,
yeah.
But hashtag not rigged, of course. All the group stuff was completely random this year. I was excited to be able to do that. Last year we had a group reveal. This year we had a group draw. So it was exciting to feel that anticipation in the moment and create some pretty exciting groups. But I'd have to somewhat agree with Mr. Bacon here that I do think this is North America's tournament to lose. East Asia is definitely a strong region, but of course Ace coming in with a bit of a new lineup and train going by. And then of course, like Rocks, Druid has been a little under the weather, so like I'm not sure if East Asia is as strong coming into the tournament as they were last year. So I'm definitely keeping my eyes on North America. I feel like Cloud9 really should take this. I mean, got to go for the 3 back-to-backs, right? So 2 unified worlds, just add a nice trophy to the shelf. Oh, it feels so good. It's not a grand slam, but who needs baseball references, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cloud9 has always been a team that's somehow they get together, and when they're on stage together, Gabe and the boys absolutely dominate. So that's gonna be interesting to see if they kind of just continue that in a new setting in Singapore. But we're obviously hyped for that, December 14th through the 17th, and that's gonna lead up to our very first reveal of 5v5, the showcase matches, which that's what we're kind of here to talk about. Obviously, people on this podcast do have some insider knowledge about what's happening, so everything we discuss will be, speculation. Some things we may like to see as fans, maybe other things develop in the future. So, if I push too much, I will be told that, they're just not going to answer that question. But let's go ahead and get right into kind of our first broad topic. We're going to start broad before we dive into specific, but the first thing I want to bring up is Munchable specifically. Shout out to him real quick. He was supposed to be another member on here, but he is traveling and could not attend. But on the Vainglory 8 stream, he had brought up the main conversation of what are the roles going to be like in Vainglory 5v5. Obviously, there's a lot of different aspects of what the roles have been in other MOBAs. We can look at League of Legends, which kind of have this standard meta of 1 top, 1 mid, 2 bottom, and then a jungle. Kind of your bottom lane has that support/captain. Dota, when I was doing some of my research, I had mentioned before we actually started recording this that I've never really played Dota, so I don't have too much knowledge, but from what I was reading, it seems that Dota maybe has more of a meta that changes based on how their setup is and position. So Humanist, I'm going to start with you first. I want you to be my first person to tackle this question. But compared to your background, compared to what you may see Vainglory, how do you see Vainglory's 5v5 kind of forming when it comes to, where we may see some of these roles?
What an honor. Okay, so, first, I think it's going to take a while before people actually figure out what any of like the legit meta is, and then of course it's going to continuously evolve. Dota has a lot more characters to play, heroes, than Vainglory does, so I would expect that we're going to see the strongest heroes quite often. And of course SCMC does a good job of getting new heroes out, but even in Dota, when there's something strong, you do tend to see it quite often. So
you don't have to be nice just because I'm on the call, by the way, Humanist. But flattery will get you everywhere.
I'm just saying, we'll keep it real,
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I'm personally most excited for, in Dota, it's known as Rat Dota, but split pushing. And that's kind of the idea of reading your opponents and reading the map and throwing people off balance. Like, in basketball, it's like when you have the ball on one side, you rotate the majority of your players there, you leave one player on the other side, and you swing the ball back over there, and then you take advantage. Like, so, for example, you might, once the game gets going, you're going to throw 4 people down in bottom lane pushing. You don't reveal your top player or your 5th player who's hiding in the top lane until there's like a huge team fight down in bottom lane. Then then top lane just starts pushing, and maybe that's like a weapon saw who's left alone to just take 2 turrets at will. So there's like a lot more things to abuse like that. But I feel like Vainglory is probably going to be pretty flexible, similar to Dota, as far as you might be able to, and it depends on like the mentality of the pro players. But I would guess that teams are not going to be scared switching things up, like starting maybe with like a tri lane in bottom and a solo player in mid and top, or switching that up and going like a 2-1-2 dependent on drafts.
All right, Tasty, how about your opinions coming from the league background?
Yeah, I think at first a lot of teams are going to try and mimic what League of Legends has, just because it's it is so well known of that formula of having a solo top laner, a solo mid laner, a duo bot lane, and a jungler. I think that's going to be what we see initially on 5v5. Like when we have the show match at Worlds, I'm expecting to see that sort of standard format come out. But I think it's really going to depend on how the jungle is. Like we don't actually know where the different jungle camps are going to be. We don't know how difficult the jungle camps are going to be or how many of them there are going to be or anything of that nature. So, if the jungle is like this very strong jungle in Vainglory, then that opens up the door to have something like 2 junglers and 3 solo lanes, which I think would be really interesting to see because you still want to have like support heroes on your team, but now they also have to be able to clear the jungle efficiently and things like that. So I think there's definitely going to be a lot of flexibility. As Humanist said, there's going to be a lot of time spent just kind of by teams practicing on 5v5, just trying to figure out what works, what's more efficient, what gets people gold and experience faster. With Vainglory is really unique also in the way that it has the experience and gold share, the ambient gold that's not a thing in games like League of Legends. So, now having 2 characters roaming the jungle together could be more efficient than, in League of Legends, you almost never want to have 2 characters roaming the jungle at the same time. So there's a lot of possibilities that I think could come out, and that's what's most exciting to me about it.
Yeah, I know. Foojee, you've obviously we've all been playing the game for a while, but Vainglory did have kind of the whole double jungling with the captain, and then it switched to the whole babysit phase where the captain kind of just sits in lane, which, now there's going to be more laners and more places for that captain to quote unquote babysit. So I don't know what you have seen or what you your different forms of this roles has been that you are excited for.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think initially, we were using Dota and League as some examples, and I agree. I think we'll see people try to mimic in the 5v5 environment things that have worked in other games. I mean, it's interesting if you go back in League of Legends. Also, what I'm curious for our game is like what region defines the meta. Like Europe was the region that actually really nailed down the meta in League of Legends, and also during that time there were lane swap things that were going on. So Europe kind of stood out as a pioneer in that game. Whereas, I don't know who it's going to be for us. I think during Worlds of 2016, Rocks certainly taught North America a lot of things. Not just by virtue of winning, but also just when they came into the scrim environment. Scrim culture did not exist really before 2017. So one thing that's going to be very different for our game, I think, is how fast the meta progresses. So yes, it took a while for other games, but we're now like 7 years into League. We are into a 3v3 environment where scrims are pretty normal in some of the major regions. So there's a lot of structure in place. So I imagine the quality of 5v5 meta development will be pretty high and pretty fast. So it's going to be a wild ride to see. In terms of like how I think it's going to play out, like we certainly did not design our 5v5 to support a specific meta. We designed it to be a very fun, engaging, and just a wild experience on a mobile device, right? And I think we definitely want to leave it up to the players to really decide what works. And we carry over a lot of our features in 3v3 that I think that still make our game quite unique. So I don't actually know how. I mean, I could easily speculate. Obviously, there's with our kind of phase 1 testing group, there's a lot of things that people are trying out to see what works and what doesn't work. But until it's out in the wild, it's really hard to say what the meta is going to end up being. But I will say this: the kind of like captain role that people know of today has become increasingly more important. And a lot of people might argue that it is the most important role in 3v3. In 5v5, it's going to be even more substantial because we now move from the meta just being who are the 3 best players to who is going to be like your strategic mind. Maybe they're not the most mechanical, but if perhaps they're on a captain or they're on a character that spends a lot of time setting up plays for the majority of the game, it's almost like a whole nother role and position. Like I'm just going to be the mind and kind of supporting people here and there, and everyone else kind of figures out what they need to do.
Right. So I kind of want to jump back though and talk about what kind of what Tasty was talking about as far as the jungle. Like with the MOBAs, it can be really important. The jungle is crucial to the game flow. Like we see with like obviously Vainglory now just has the one lane, but it's going to be expanding to the 3 lanes. But for Vainglory or for the jungle, we've kind of seen like red and blue buffs before. Is that something that you would like to see kind of be mimicked in Vainglory? Do we know anything like as far as what kind of buffs will be in the jungle? I'll start back with Foojee, I guess, on this one. We'll work our way backwards. But
yeah, so we definitely have some teasers and things lined up that'll start really rolling out to the public in December and beyond. So a lot of these questions will certainly be answered to some extent. But I will say that without like giving too much away, I'm going to always kind of walk on the edge here. But we certainly want to make the jungle more dynamic than it currently is, with the focus being on more things players can go after. There are more things to contest, more points of interest, and essentially just more paths in general, right? To get around the map to your desired location. And, I think this is going to really open up a lot from the jungle standpoint to where now, everyone's very much, it's kind of a hamster wheel. Like everyone clears the same way, rotates the same way. There's some healing camps, but people don't really actively think about it. And one of our goals in 5v5 is we want to give people active things to think about while they're in the jungle.
Yeah, so Tasty and Humanist, maybe you guys can comment on and not necessarily, beat around the question like Foojee has to, but maybe talk about what you're what you're excited for and what you would want to see and speculate. Obviously, Foojee knows what's happening, so he's got all the knowledge, but he can't share that, and he has to tease us. That's his job.
All right, I'll add into this real quick. Now, this is something that I hear. And I get it. A lot of game designers feel this way. A lot of players feel this way. But I go the other way on this. RNG in the game, I kind of like a little spice in my game. And in Dota, there's not like a red and blue buff, but what you have is runes that spawn in the river. Mm-hmm. Now, they actually added in runes that spawn on the map consistently and predictably. Those are bounty runes, and they give you a little experience in gold. And that's great. That was because supports were getting choked out. But in the river, you'll get a random rune to spawn, and they're really powerful runes, and if you can take advantage of them properly, it can help swing the tide of a game. Sometimes in Dota, there are games that can go incredibly long, like you have a 70-minute game, and something like a powerful rune at the right time can swing the game in your favor. But for example, they have a double damage rune, so your physical attacks literally do double damage until the rune expires. There's an invisibility rune, which you're invisible until you cast a spell or attack. There's an illusion rune, which grants 2 illusions of you that does, I think, like 30% damage and takes 300% damage. And then there's a haste rune, which causes you to run at maximum speed until the duration times out. So I like those and the kind of the RNG factor in that regard.
Tasty. Yeah, for me, kind of talking about the red and blue buffs that you see in League of Legends, I really want to see more impactful jungle camps. Obviously, like Foojee was mentioning right now, we just have, there's camps that are just purely there for golden experience, and there's camps that just give you that little bit of healing, and that's really about it. Obviously, the Crystal Sentries notwithstanding, but I really want to see camps that provide a little bit more, just because it makes then jungle invades a much more appealing strategy. And one of the things that I think we've seen Vainglory balance throughout the past 2 years or so, constantly trying to tweak and change things up to make jungle invades appealing but not too punishing. And I really like the fact that the balance team balances the jungle with jungle invading in mind, because those are some of the most exciting plays, but at the same time you don't want it to be too strong, because then all of a sudden a game just snowballs out of control really, really quickly. So I like what what the design team has been doing thus far, in terms of keeping the invades in mind when they balance the jungle. But I really do want to see those more impactful camps, so that you can go in, and even when you invade, you choose how you want to invade. Like, do you want to focus on stealing away like let's say there is things like red and blue buffs, again, just for the sake of argument and for what people already know. You choose, do you want to go after that red attack buff, or do you want to try and take away the blue buff and make sure that their mages are going to be a little bit further behind? So I like having more choices and more meaningful choices, kind of like what Foojee was alluding to as well.
Yeah, we'll get into more of those objective discussions. Obviously, there's a lot of new objectives that's going to be on the 5v5 map. But let's stick in the jungle for now and discuss another main thing, is the ganking. Obviously, in 3v3, you have a top lane, and that's really your only path to go gank and try to kill the enemy laner. There's really not much thought about where do I need to go. But with 5v5, now that we have, the 3-lane option, let's say you're mid and you're currently pushing stronger than your opponent, now you have the option to maybe rotate up, rotate down, maybe go into the enemy jungle and invade there. Let's start with Foojee being an ex-coach, player, everything else. Like, what's going to be the biggest difficulties for players to adjust when it comes to things like rotations, which is going to be a big topic for teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty massive adjustment. You could argue that rotations in Vainglory's 3v3 environment aren't really rotations in the same way that you would describe them in a multi-lane environment, because there isn't a lot of decision making that needs to be done, right? So different teams are going to be able to bring different types of strategies because there are more lanes with more opportunities to gank. I mean, you mentioned that specifically. So this is one of those things which is really going to separate the best teams, I think, right out of the gate. And then even the best, solo queue players is, where does their attention go and why does it go there? Is there a kind of a method to the madness of does it make more sense to shut down the middle lane? Does it, make more sense to send your whole team to a side lane and push and shove that in to really draw attention from other people? But I think that's the key. The thing about 3v3 right now is almost everybody knows what to do when you get an ace or
Right.
you knock down the first turret. It's a very linear path after that. You either take some jungle, take the gold mine, or if you can't do either, you generally just shop and get ready for the next head-to-head. In 5v5, that is not that clear. And that's a pretty big opportunity for teams, I think, to figure out over the course of time. Because if you get an ace, or if you get a successful gank or a successful invade, the decision after that is like the world is your oyster. At that point, there's still so many things you could do. So that's what I'm most excited about when it comes to just this multi-lane, kind of jungle arena at this point, is like, what are people going to do like when they actually make those initial decisions, and why do they value their choice?
All right. Humanist or Tasty?
I mean,
Yep.
Well, Bacon, go ahead.
one of the things that I'm looking forward to when it comes to like the pathing in the jungle and such as, so we had obviously, everyone who watched the Vainglory 8 over this past season, we've had the telestrator, and we used the telestrator a few times with the 5v5 map image. And so we had that up in the studio all day, a lot of the days, and just you're just kind of looking at it, and we would even just sit there, Munchables, Arakizoro, and I, and just sort of theory craft some ideas for ourselves just throughout the day. And one of the things that we would always, someone from the production team would always just come over and, like, while we were on breaks between regions, and just kind of start playing with it and drawing lines on like the paths through the jungle, like not as a strategic thing, but just as, something to do. And it always was really amazing to kind of see how much of the map, or how much of the screen actually got covered by lines when people were drawing just along the jungle routes. Like, so there's a lot of paths that are going to be viable, and obviously it's going to depend, like I said earlier, where the jungle camps are, how strong each one is, but just the fact that there's so many different routes you can take, the ganking possibilities, even if you're counter jungling, or if you're invading someone's jungle as a team, there's a lot of different spots that you're going to be able to try and sit and ambush. And then the discussion of one of the things Munchables and I talked about was God wards, and this is a phrase that it doesn't actually get used that much, but especially in League of Legends, it's basically spots on the map that you almost need to have a ward on. And it's called the God Ward spots because there's in League of Legends, for instance, there's pretty much at the start of the game 4 spots that you need to have a ward, and those are the entrances to your jungle. It's basically, it allows you to see if an opponent is trying to invade your jungle or if someone's trying to rotate through the map. If you have a ward in each of the God Ward spots, you will always know where a rotation is going to be happening. And so we were looking at like potential God Ward spots for Vainglory, and there was about 4 to 5, I think, depending on how exactly the layout's going to look in 5v5 that we identified. And so it's having those many options just to be like, you need to cover this much vision if you want to be able to know where your opponents are at all times at the very start of the game is just, it's really promising to me.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think.
Go ahead, Humanist.
Yeah, along the lines of Bacon was talking about the paths through the jungle, and yeah, there should be more paths. Also, a lot more obstacles. So, heroes that can take advantage of wall jumping and a lot of mobility should even that much more elusive through the jungle now. And so, I think people will look to take advantage of that where they can, especially if the hero is fitting the defined meta. I wonder, of course, about heroes like Flicker or Kroll who need to be like empowered in Brush. So the placement of those are going to be pretty important, and I wonder if that'll be like changed or balanced because of that, or if those heroes will be changed or balanced in regards to that. One thing about Dota that Vainglory doesn't have really, I mean, I think it's visually in Vainglory, but it doesn't have an effect, but their level changes. And that affects your vision as well. So like if you're downhill looking up a ramp and someone's sitting on top of that ramp, they'll see you, but you won't see them.
Right.
So I don't know, like it could get even more complex. And then like Bacon mentioned the God Ward, just like the OP warding, it becomes even more important when stuff like that comes into play.
I mean, Dota even has like trees that you can actually destroy, right? They're not just like bushes that stay there forever.
Oh, and you eat them. They heal you.
Oh,
You eat the tree.
no,
Or you can cut them down. You can buy an item to cut them down. I like to hide in the lane, in the sides of the lanes, and like cut my own path through the trees and just be a sneaky monster.
That's just too much.
Stuff like that in
That's
Vainglory
insane.
would be crazy.
So, I mean, I guess we're talking about jungle aggression. Like, you know, we've seen a lot of that in the past with 3v3. Do we still think that we'll see as much of the jungle aggression in 5v5, or will, I guess for people who don't know, will it start out slower and kind of progress, or how will that operate in the 5v5?
So our kind of North Star with everything we do with 5v5 is to make sure that it is not a substantially higher time investment for players, right? So we're not looking to go from like average 18-minute matches with 3v3 to like a 70-minute average or something like, you know, Dota has. So I think for us, it's everything is essentially about arriving at these points of interest quicker. So when we talked about the jungle objectives earlier and providing some things for players to be interested in invading for, these are not going to be things that take very long for players to want to, you know, try to go after, you know, to spawn into the map, for them to be contest points. You know, we do a lot of balancing around respawn timers and how often we want the game to really focus in on the lane versus the jungle aggression. So I think it's really going to come down to what players and teams want to accomplish in the match. Like you could literally go straight in to the enemy jungle if you wanted to right in the beginning. You have to weigh the consequences of that failing, because obviously similar to now, if you were to go straight in and mess up, it could lead to pretty bad things. But the distance to safety is further on the 5v5 map. The amount of time it takes to get to certain, you know, parts of your jungle is also further in a 5v5 map environment. So with every risky invade or aggressive play, players are going to have to relearn and calculate the timing of the consequence if it doesn't pay off. So I don't know how risky people will play out of the gate. I think most people will find aggression tempered and something that comes later until they get a really good feel. And at that point, I think aggression will transfer from people probably spending a lot of time looking to invade in the jungle and more so towards controlling certain areas of the map, meaning jungle and
Right.
lane control, not just, forward camps like in 3v3. There's just so much more to take in the 5v5 environment if you do have a successful play, whether it's early, mid, or late game.
Tasty, do you want to talk maybe a little about League and when their aggression really starts and how late that can be? Because of course we can maybe even throw in this discussion right now about the time of 5v5 or Vainglory and how they're not necessarily going to expand the time to a 50-minute hour game like Humanist was talking about for Dota, and we can even see sometimes in League. So I mean, League, they have a more passive start compared to what you may want to see out of Vainglory's 5v5.
I mean, for me, I think a lot of the timing of the aggression is just going to come down to the individual teams and the heroes that they're playing. Like even in League of Legends now, you still see some teams that are just very, very passive. If they have a jungler that is more farm reliant than others, then they'll sit in the jungle and just farm up. Whereas if you have a more aggressive, sometimes you see level 1 ganks in things like League. So you could still very much see the level 1 ganks coming out of the jungle in Vainglory now. So for me, it's just a lot. It's not so much about the map design or anything like that. That one's, it's purely just about team mentality and composition that they've drafted for themselves. So I don't think the map design is really going to change what times the aggression kind of happens for junglers.
And I would say the largest factor is going to be how the game is currently balanced on whatever update's being played. For example, once things really get refined as far as what players find as strong, it's going to be as simple as the developer is saying, all right, well, tier 1 turrets now have 100 less health and 3 less armor. And also Saw has 30 bonus weapon power starting, something like that could mean now we're going to see actually aggressive invades into pushes. Or it could mean that we're going to see just differently balanced lanes. Like it'll just kind of switch up the momentum. And then once you've kind of reacted to whatever the game's balanced around, then you're going to be going off of, Bacon's talking about team strategy. And so, well, if one team's picked a super late game carry that needs to farm, then hopefully in the draft their opponents realize that and they go with a more aggressive, in your face, nice burst heavy lineup, and they're going to rush into your jungle behind that safe lane where you would predict that laner would be laning. So you can take advantage of what Foojee was saying is a shared jungle and kind of lane territory. And then that's where you get into the super level mind games of like one team predicting that they're going to invade and setting up in the other lane. So that's where it gets really fun.
Yeah, so another thing that our kind of last question I would say for jungle, I don't know if it's actually going to be, we may come back to more jungle, but in 3v3, of course, we have the jungle shop. This kind of helps players, the speed of the game continue on. Players can rotate down a jungle shop. They can kind of buy items there instead of having to port home. I mean, we can start with Tasty and Humanist, maybe get your opinion on if you would think a jungle shop has a place in 5v5, and then Foojee, you can say what you wish about this whole jungle shop. But I've seen this kind of topic being thrown around on either forums or Twitter or somewhere about people still wanting to see a jungle shop somewhere on 5v5.
Yeah, I mean, I think Humanist, as the Dota expert, might be best suited to talk about the jungle shop's presence.
Is there no jungle shop in League?
There is not.
Rip. All right, so in Dota, what we have are shops that are basically on the far edge of the map, kind of in the middle of the lane. Not like how do I describe this? Like the halfway point between both sides on the far edge of the map, on the top and bottom lane, and that shop does not sell all items that can be purchased at the home base, but it's a nice chunk of items that feed into that are very common and kind of core items, and you would oftentimes pick those up there. But for example, like you can't pick up, I don't know, if like you needed a healing flask and it wasn't sold here, you'd have to go home, or you want some sort of regeneration, maybe that won't be sold there. Then there's also like a secret shop. That's what they call it. It's not such a secret. You have to. It's a little more protected based on the position, kind of being between the middle lane and the top lane if you're on the Radiant side, and that's where like super high level items are sold, and you actually can't buy those in the base. You have to get there, which presents a problem if you get into the late game and you're being pushed in and you can't get out of your base and you can't shop to buy that item that you need to give you that huge power spike. So it presents kind of interesting opportunities like that.
Yeah, and
Interesting opportunities, huh? When you're getting shoved into the base and you're losing all hope.
There's also a courier in Dota. You guys know about the courier?
The courier's fun. The courier's real fun.
Like,
No idea.
If say you're sitting in mid lane, you're just last hitting. You're just a boss. You're just getting your last hits. You're harassing your opponent. You're taking no damage. There's no reason for you to go home other than to buy items. So you got your little buddy, and you can purchase items, put him on him. He'll shuttle the items out to you in lane, deliver them, and then go back to base.
Nice.
Huh. Yeah.
The caveat to it is that the enemy team, if they see it, they can attack it and kill it.
Oh gosh.
And I don't actually remember. I've played a little bit of Dota, but I haven't played enough to have it happen frequently enough to know what happens. Like if the courier is carrying items and gets killed, like do the items just get dropped?
No, you just have to wait for it to respawn.
Okay.
Which is cool. I designed a courier. Just saying, it's in Dota.
I feel like the courier should be played by a person. Like it shouldn't be an NPC. Like you literally queue up to be courier.
Well, that's another team synergy thing. Like all 5 players have control of the courier. So if like one person's flying it out and he's like knows he's taking a dangerous path, but he's kind of walking the line, and your dumbass offlaner takes it and moves it and gets it killed, and you're like, okay, this is why we need a roster swap.
Or if like you have all of the ingredients for like your first tier 3 item on the way, and someone else calls the courier to give them like a potion.
Yes, exactly.
Jesus.
But like as far as the jungle shop goes, I really like the jungle shop. I don't know if I would necessarily want to see like the full Dota 2 style of jungle shop of having like different items available versus if you're at the jungle shop or not. But I definitely like the idea of the jungle shop just as a way to be able to increase your power without necessarily having to do a full recall. Obviously in League of Legends, that recall timing becomes a very big thing, especially for like the bot lane and the mid lanes who don't generally run the teleport spell. Which that's a whole nother can of worms we can get into, is things like teleport and such. But the fact that in League of Legends, if you're like in the situation that Humanist presented, where you're farming away, you're harassing your bottom laner, you're doing a really good job. But if they have to recall, let's say they recall 2 or 3 times, they're gonna have a few items, whereas you're still sitting on your starting items. But because you're doing such a good job in the lane, you don't want to recall. So you instead have to like push in the lane and find a time when you can recall to minimize how much your opponent can sort of recover during that time. Whereas if you have a jungle shop, you can walk to the jungle shop, pick up your items, and walk back to lane and be back and ready to go in a little bit of quicker time than if you had to do a full recall and walk all the way out back to the lane. So I like the jungle shop for the fact that it kind of doesn't feel as punishing to have to take a recall when you're ahead in that sense. Right.
What if we just put a jungle shop in the middle of the 5v5 map, just one, and that's where everyone has to meet up to shop? What kind of destruction we gonna get there?
The cornucopia, like in Hunger Games.
Yes, Hunger Games.
I would. You know what I would actually really love? So going back a little bit of time in Vainglory, the gold miner used to be capturable.
Yeah.
I want to see a jungle shop that like you have to kill a minion or like a neutral objective type of target, and whoever kills it gets access to the shop. And if you want to be able to shop at the jungle shop, you have to kill like the enemy's jungle shop. And it's like the type of like it can't be bought from if there's a team actively fighting it type of thing. I think that would actually be a lot of fun.
Foojee, are you listening?
I mean, I hear everything.
I should be able to sign up for like jungle shop membership rewards and be rewarded for my purchases through a game and
Microtransactions on the jungle shop.
Gold back.
It is something that, we should
Every
we
10
could
items
consider.
you buy at the jungle shop, you get one free.
In order to continue your item build, please pay $5 to finish your tier 3 item.
Might want to put a disclaimer that is all completely joking, given the microtransaction discussions that have been going on in the video game community of late.
Yeah, no, I think at the core, Super Evil, we still very much value the gameplay, the overall experience as our North Star, and then we're not here to make a cash grab game, so nobody has to worry about weird mechanics like that in 5v5. Although I might take the courier, player select courier option back to the dev team and see what they think about that. Humanist inspired me a little bit.
Dude.
We can just call it hashtag like donkey or something as the position.
It's so good.
Or alternatively, like there's a game that I played a while back. I can't actually remember the name of it. Because as I mentioned, I've played pretty much every MOBA that has existed, but there's one that I played where one of the roles, it was a normal like 5v5 MOBA, but one of the roles, instead of being like a support that goes into the bottom lane and like babysits an AD carry type of situation, they stay in the base and they basically played, I don't know if you're familiar with the game Zuma.
No.
Negative.
So it's like it's this game where like there's these gems that kind of move in a circle, like a spiral towards the middle, and you were like in the middle, and you could sort of get gems to shoot out at the other gems. You have to like make groups of 3 along this pathway. If anyone doesn't know Zuma, just go and look up Zuma. It's Zuma. I believe that's the spelling of it. Let me double check and make sure I've got the right game that I'm telling people. Yeah, Zuma. Zuma. It was like an old Flash game, and it was like right up there with Bejeweled and that type of stuff, and Bubble Bobble, those sorts of things. But like the support player literally just sat in base and played Zuma to provide buffs for the team, and that was what they did for like the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, was just sit there playing Zuma. So this courier item option, just have them like give them like Bejeweled to play while they're waiting for someone to buy items to go deliver. And like the better they do it Bejeweled, the faster their courier speed.
I vote against that one.
You basically just sent the entire audience on a research mission to figure out what that point is. I still feel like I needed to
If
be
anyone can
inebriated
remember
to
the name of
figure it
that
out.
game, the game that had it might even still exist. I don't think it actually shut down. But the game that had a support player play Zuma for like the first 15 minutes of the game. If anyone can remember that and send it
you
to
should
me.
just Bacon wants a weapon Arden who's gonna sit in base and just punch a dummy.
But no, like legit, if someone can remember the name of that game and send it to me, I'll give you like, I don't know, $5 Google Play or iOS store card. Because
Oh, now we got money on the line.
I just found it. I'm about to send it over to you right now.
Fuji,
All right, so-
did Fuji get his chance to maybe tease the jungle shop, or did we go on that tangent?
I didn't tease.
Okay.
Here's what I'll say. I can't say too much about this. Our desire is to not restrict the ability for game momentum to move forward. So however you want to interpret that, we don't want lulls. We don't want periods of time where nothing is happening. So we have some, creative ways where we're trying to continue to encourage players to be able to find, the items they need on the map when they need them.
Sweet.
Yeah, well, you're definitely not going to get a lull if you put one jungle shop in the middle of the map and tell them to go at it. So
Dude, between cornucopias and couriers, we just need a third C item. And I think our game is complete.
Yeah. All right, so jumping back into the lane, I guess, like right now with the 3v3 Vainglory, obviously you have to, in order to win the game, you have to destroy the the Vein Crystal. To get to the Vein Crystal or to be able to even do any damage to it, you have to take down all the turrets in a row. Like in League of Legends, that's not necessarily true. Like, there's some type of protection put in play, such as like inhibitors, and they must be destroyed in order to get to the final objective. I guess, is that like going to be kind of something that we would see with the Vainglory 5v5, or is it still going to be kind of like you have to destroy all the turrets to get to, or whatever the final, I'm assuming it'd be the Vein Crystal still, but I don't know if we want to have Foojee handle this one first, or if we want to see what Humanist and TastyBacon would have to say, or what they would like to see.
You guys go ahead. I want to hear your unadulterated thoughts.
Because Humanist, doesn't Dota have like barracks? Is that what theirs is called?
Yeah, Dota has barracks. All right, so in Dota, you got your tier 1. And when I watch, this is hilarious. When I watch Dota and they say tower, I say turret right after, so I don't mess it up when I cast. But they have tier 1 tower, tier 2. The tier 1 has no backdoor protection. Tier 2 has backdoor protection, meaning that the creeps have to be there for you to basically do significant damage. Same thing to the tier 3. They have to be killed in succession. Behind the tier 3, you have 2 barracks, your melee barracks and your ranged barracks. And they basically are going to affect, respectively, the creeps that are spawning down the lane. So when I kill my opponent's melee barracks, now my melee units that spawn down that lane specifically are going to be much stronger. They have more health and do more damage. If I kill both barracks, then that's really ideal. When you kill all barracks in each lane, you get mega creeps, which are like even stronger than those buffed creeps before, and it's like almost impossible to win, although it can be done.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Tasty, anything about League specifically? Those have the inhibitors, of course.
Yep. Yeah, League has inhibitors, and it's fairly similar in the sense that when you destroy an inhibitor, you get a super minion that spawns with every wave of minions that goes down the lane in that specific lane. And if you destroy all 3 inhibitors, then all 3 lanes begin spawning double super minions. So there's 2 super minions with each wave of minions that goes down each lane at that point. And it's very similar situation to Dota, where once that happens, I think the win rate for a team that loses all 3 inhibitors is like 0.1% or something along those lines over the past 7 years. So
I want you to cite your source just then, Bacon.
That's why I said I
no
believe
Wikipedia.
it's something like.
Can I also mention
there was actually something that had the exact rate, but a while ago.
It's small.
Dota had it added in shrines, which actually play a pretty big role. They're out on the map. There's 1 in each half of the jungle for each team. So there's 4 total on the map, and then there's 2 or 3 in your base. I haven't been playing as much Dota recently, but basically, your team can activate the shrine. Any player can activate the shrine. It gives you both energy and health back. And there are huge strategical points for teams to fight around, where you can kind of kite back until you're next to a shrine, activate it, and then everybody's getting regened and healed up. And that's a big deal on the base too. And those are kind of strategically placed near the towers.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, we think of general objectives throughout 5v5. Obviously, like each camp has their own style. Like if they give you buffs or if they're stronger, depending on how much shield they have. It's going to be interesting to see what Vainglory is going to have instead of just, the normal minions and maybe like the treant type elder treant thing. I don't know if we want to get into this discussion. I'm going to try to get as much out of Foojee as I can. But the vision topic is a topic that we have had for a while, that I've seen people discuss. We have mines and flares in 3v3 currently, and other MOBAs. You have many other wards: totem, control, stealth. You have the observer and sentry wards in between Dota and League. Do you think vision is something that needs to be expanded for 5v5? Are they going to need to have different types of vision? Tasty, I don't know if you want to start first with some of your speculation about something you like from League that you'd like to see in VG.
One of the things I really want to see is like things like scout traps, not necessarily revealing stealth. I love what League of Legends actually did. I believe it was 2 seasons ago now, where they basically took out the regular green, like the pink. They used to have green wards and pink wards, and it was that green wards provided vision, pink wards provided true vision, and it's still runs off of a somewhat similar idea, but now the sort of quote unquote pink wards don't spot invisible units; they only spot wards. In addition to providing the vision range, and I would like to see something like that personally, where like scout traps still provide vision of heroes that are within the area of it, but I would like to see something like the only way to spot an invisible hero is with a flare, just because it adds a little bit more to a hero like Flicker, who relies so much on stealth. Now you have to provide. You actually have to use an item to be able to spot them out. It's not, you can't just put down a whole bunch of scout traps and all of a sudden Flicker's useless. So I'd like to see either only flares providing vision, or have some other type of item consumable that you can put down, but limit the number of those that you can have that provide true vision of an area. Something like that are things I would really like to see.
As far as vision goes, it goes back. One of the things is that it kind of goes back to what I was talking about, having different levels. And one thing that I think would be pretty dope, Foojee, is high ground ward spots. So like maybe there's a cliff, you got camps on both sides, you can drop a ward on top, and you got vision over both sides of the cliffs and a little bit further radius because you're sitting higher up. And then along the lines of Bacon, you're kind of reminding me of Dust and Dota. And the way Dust works is like it just goes out from your hero in a radius. And any opponent that it hits that's invisible will be revealed. I like that, but I think I'd like to see like a mix, like a kind of targetable option of that. It's like, so you could like target a hero like Flicker with an item that can basically track him.
You guys have a lot of requests.
You're writing it down?
I got them all here. I actually had to go to the second page in my notes.
I've got plenty more. We've got a ways to go still.
I like the high ground spots though, Foojee.
Elevation is an interesting mechanic in and of itself in a MOBA experience, I think. Dota certainly is, I think, done a pretty good job with this. But elevation lends itself to a problem. Well, I don't necessarily say this is a problem, but vision in general in MOBAs has been a like ongoing, continual, repetitive like undertaking to figure out what is the best way to tackle it. And it's not too dissimilar to ways we have really looked forward to our 5v5 mode and said, what are some ways we can really think about how vision's going to impact this game mode. What are some unique elements we can bring, obviously from the Vainglory perspective, but then what are some best practices that we can take from other MOBAs that have literally been like trying to figure vision out for 6+ years and be like, oh, we finally landed on something that we think is, like for it to be fun, useful, and strategic all at the same time is quite the trinity of game design when it comes to in-game elements or things that you want to interact with. Like we think of scouts and flares. Like Bacon said, they're not very engaging. Like flares are used all late game to just kind of spam different areas of the map to make sure you're not moving in anywhere that you shouldn't be. Scout traps are kind of left and forgotten after the early game, and people know the 3v3 map so well at this point to where vision is not really that useful. It's not a strategic part of the game as much as it used to be. People just kind of know it so well. They just maneuver around the map and you can basically predict. So I think it's far more important for vision to be meaningful in the 5v5 environment because it's much harder to predict where people are going to be. And if you can control vision of specific areas of the map, you in some ways control that area of the map like we talked about before. It's more than just kills and jungle camps. It's controlling entire segments and really kind of pushing that control forward bit by bit. There's some stuff we're doing that I cannot wait to show people at the unveiling at Worlds this year. I can't really talk about it. Pretty cool though. I think everyone's going to basically have Jaws on the table when they see it. So I can't wait for us to actually like
The caster? Or
push the button. The cat. What do you mean the caster?
Jaws.
Oh yes. At Worlds, we're gonna put Jaws on a table,
And that's going to be the entire 5v5 showcase.
We're
It's just
gonna
watching
zoom-
Jaws standing on the table.
We're just gonna zoom in on his scout trap tattoo he just got on his upper right pec. But no, like it's honestly there's some great stuff coming, and we have put a lot of thought into this because it's really important. Like any MOBA developer, vision is definitely a top priority of getting it right.
Yeah, I think vision obviously is going to be important because, like I believe Tasty was saying earlier, all the different lines they had drawn on the map and how many different ways you can get to the lane to gank, it's going to be important to have maybe different forms of vision or different things you can keep yourself safe. I'm just going to throw it out there. Foojee, obviously, I'm not making you answer this, but Tasty, Humanist, like, I'm going to go to League. Humanist, you can relate it to Dota. But when there's a 4v4 fight going on and all of a sudden your top laner teleports in and uses that TP, that can change fights drastically. You have to make sure they have a way to get there. We've always seen someone teleporting on a ward to get a backdoor. Depending on how big the 5v5 map actually is, we've only seen the artwork. Is teleport going to be crucial for a way of travel, or what do you guys want to see? Maybe different forms of this type of travel to help 5v5.
Bacon.
Well, I'm probably going to end up taking this and going into a slightly different direction.
That's okay.
Because
Stay out of Zuma. Don't bring that up again.
No, we're not going into that one.
All right.
But because you're talking about like teleport and things like that, and so like kind of as we talk about summoner spells as a whole, obviously something like teleport and the mobility across the map is incredibly important, and I don't know if we really need to see something like a teleport, because from what I've seen of the map, like it's definitely much longer, but it's not quite as tall, like width-wise, in terms of from top lane to bottom lane doesn't look like as much of a distance as it is in other games. So I don't know if teleport really needs to be a thing in Vainglory, but while we're talking about kind of summoner spells like Smite, I think a Smite option would be incredibly important. It's one of the things I've actually talked to Foojee about this in person with Munchables as well. That the ability to smite and have that extra fighting over neutral objectives, I think is something that is incredibly important and adds a lot of excitement and even a bit of skill and teamwork and coordination to a game. And like I think going through items may be the best way to introduce things that are kind of what we have as summoner spells in League of Legends. I think introducing things like that into terms of items is likely the way that I would see Vainglory going, just because I remember way back at the very first Autumn Championship, I was actually talking to Captain Nito about some of the differences and similarities of balancing Vainglory versus something like League of Legends. And it was reflex block was actually what he had mentioned to me, was sort of like how they feel Flash is in League of Legends, and where it's one of those situations where if you don't have that, like, then you're probably doing something wrong at the end of the day, or are just very, very confident. And so, the reflex block was kind of their equivalent of like a summoner spell level ability, but they had tuned it into an item. And so I would love to see kind of more of those big, massive, like, abilities be tied to items. I think that'd be a really interesting way to not only change the way the game is played, but also introduce more choices in terms of item builds. And I think like things like Echo have definitely sort of introduced that as well.
So in Dota, you have your town portal scroll. It's an 80-second cooldown. You have to purchase it, but you can go to from base to any structure like your lane. You can go from lane to base, and I really like that. It feels weird for me in Vainglory only to be able to recall home, but assuming that they keep that mechanic and they don't put in some other form of mobility, whether it's an item or an objective on the map, then I think it's actually going to also limit potential hero design in the future, which lend itself to some of the most fun gameplay. For example, you have Nature's Prophet in Dota, which can teleport anywhere on the map, and he's got a cooldown. He summons Trance. He's really good at pushing. But when you're playing against Nature's Prophet, you just have to make sure that you have your town portal scroll ready. Or there's boots that you can buy, like one of the more expensive pairs of boots, and you can teleport to any structure or allied unit. But if you can't do that, then I think it will limit whether like a hero can be designed like that or not. Like if there's a hero that has insane movement speed, can basically Spirit Breaker can charge across the map, pathing through walls, cliffs, trees, anything, once he's locked onto an opponent. Well, I don't think that you could counter that if there wasn't a town portal scroll for a support player to teleport from bottom to top lane and save their ally. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of other heroes does VG need that that's missing from Dota or from League of Legends? Like you were just talking about, like the Spirit Walker? Did you say?
Yeah, Spirit Breaker. He's a really
Breaker.
Cool. Yeah, he kind of enables team fighting and ganking. That he's one of the more mobile, like ganking from lane to lane heroes. Now, this is something that it was actually called Roam before it was changed to Captain. And there's a lot of times when people load into the game of Dota where like you might have someone who wants to jungle, someone who wants to lane, someone who wants to support, but there's a lot of times someone who just wants to roam and gank, and Spirit Breaker is great at that. I kind of think of Glaive. Like Glaive doesn't have charge, but I think he'd be a great roam ganker just to disrupt lanes. And he might get behind in the long run, but if his utility is just making sure that he kills someone in the lane like every 2 minutes, then he's doing his job. Definitely Vainglory doesn't have the uber mobility heroes. There's another hero, Pit Lord, which can take all of his allies that are standing near him and teleport them all at once to a target location. And that's his ultimate ability. So that makes like him and his team incredibly mobile. I'd like to see heroes that have more buffs. So you can basically, like Adagio, with his heal and his Agent of Wrath, like a little bit more of those type of abilities, I think, to create like uber carries.
Right.
Foojee, do you specifically have any, heroes that you think Vainglory needs to add, like mages or more captains, or maybe even like a bruiser type role to make 5v5 more stable, I guess?
So, yeah, I definitely think
I have a lot of information that I want to tell you, but I can't type of so.
So you would think that this is me just trying to be careful with what I say, but it's actually me just pausing my thoughts as the train goes by and squeals in my ear.
I can edit that out.
Not as oh no, it's not for the cast. I mean, heck, you're getting like environmental effects for free right now. It's
Right.
mostly just for my own thought process. But anyway, so like this is one of the things where there are certainly lots of heroes I still want to see. I mean, I understand like to a certain extent the heroes that we're working on now, but a lot will change depending on how successful 5v5 becomes. I think we're all very optimistic. We're all working very hard on it, but in many ways we've been developing heroes for the last few years based upon a 3v3 environment, right? So this is one of these things where like turning the switch into a 5v5 mode, that's going to be something that's very different for our dev team, because we're not currently, let's say, trying to develop heroes with 5v5 meta in mind, but we do have heroes with 3v3 meta in mind because it's been established. So a lot of heroes will find new homes. A lot of heroes will fulfill new purposes that are on the current roster. And then, I imagine, 6 to 8 months from now, heroes that we're releasing will have a very heavy influence for how, the new game mode has developed and kind of where we're going. But for specific types of heroes, I'm still a MOBA fan in or outside of Vainglory. So, I think stance-based heroes are something I'd like to see. Humanist talked about heroes with some very special types of ways they interact with the map, and I think that's always a very fun thing to produce, because you essentially get heroes that are they're unique in their own way. I remember when League of Legends released Ivern, and this hero was like, this is like an acid trip. Like, honestly, like, it felt like whoever developed this hero had to have been on something, because he is the most wacky. Like, he's a goofy jungler that instead of killing minions, he like surrounds them with like a happy spirit circle and just kind of dissolves them into candy. And then like his, he like just creates brush randomly anywhere on the map. So imagine like on, Vainglory, and there's the tri brush, but what if you could just walk up to lane and pop a piece of brush right in the middle? Like, this character is wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up becoming heavily meta for a pretty long time, because people found these quirky abilities that he had, because he also had a shield like element. He could throw a shield on an ally, and when they kind of everybody shield the primary damage carry meta, he came in handy quite a lot. So I think there's a place for quirky heroes, a place for strategic, environmentally based heroes. There's just a place for everyone, right? Like, come on, this is Vainglory. This is the whole idea. If Bacon and Humanists can make it with Weapon Power, Arden, and Ozo, then there's a place for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I haven't said I've made it yet, but
you made
working
it?
on it.
Come on, man.
All I'm saying is Weapon Power Lane Arden, 100% win rate in Vainglory 8 this past season.
Ozo got pulled out in the finals of Worlds 2016, so he may not have won that match. It might have been
Dude, I thought, I was like, wait a second. Is it really legit? No.
Is this really going to be an 8-minute loss? What? No, but anyway,
just crushed me. I felt like I lost too in that moment. We were talking about heroes, mobility, and stuff, but because I thought about this when we were talking about jungle, but we started talking about different heroes. Something that is really cool. I don't know how you would control it in Vainglory. I think you have to solve that issue. But some of my favorite heroes, and there's actually an item where you can do it too, but not to the same effect. You can dominate jungle creeps. Well, you can dominate lane creeps as well, but jungle creeps have special abilities, right?
Can you define what dominate means?
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So basically,
you
take control over that unit, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So say there's a unit in the Vainglory 5 vs 5 map that throws a rock at you and stuns you, and it's technically an ability. Well, you this hero that you design can take control of units. So maybe when you're pushing the lane, you just take an opponent's unit and help you push more. But maybe you go through the jungle and you take this unit that can cast a spell, or maybe it's like the healing unit, and then you can use it on an ally at will. But you basically have that under your control, have its abilities, and can use it to help push or take objectives.
Yeah, that's
Right.
cool.
All right, so let's see. I guess I don't really want to circle back completely to the jungle, but there's one thing that we did completely miss, which was the two main objectives. I guess the two main objectives in League, which would be that like the Elder Dragon eventually, and also the Baron Pit. Dota has, what is it called, the Roshan or Roshan? How do you say that?
Roshan.
Okay, so those are
Or
two.
just Rosh for short.
Right, so those are like the two main objectives. We've seen the artwork for VG 5v5. They also kind of have those two spots. But a big thing that Vainglory had in 3v3, of course, is the Kraken. And we obviously may not necessarily see the Kraken on 5v5. The Halcyon Full is probably going to be her home forever, but who knows what happens. But I'm interested to see, compared to what you guys have seen in League and Dota, like those main objectives that become the main focus of team fights later on, that actually a lot of teams have to decide when to try to take that objective, what you may like to see in VG 5v5 when it comes to the type of buff you get, and if that item is going to be the key to pushing to win.
Yeah, I definitely agree in that I would like to see Kraken remain a 3v3 only objective. If only because, if Kraken is on the 5v5 map, then all of a sudden the lore team has to do like this ridiculous amount of work to figure out why Kraken is on both of these areas. And there's no, it doesn't look like there's a tunnel that leads anywhere, so you can't just have like that cop out answer being like, it's
There's
all
a
one
tunnel.
giant tunnel that connects it all. So
Hey, they did it with King Kong, right? So
Oh, for the lore team.
So I'm always looking out for the lore team a little bit. But no, I would definitely, I like the idea that, Vainglory and League of Legends both have of having different the objective change as time goes on. So obviously, with Vainglory, you have the gold miner and then it becomes the Kraken at the 15-minute mark. In League of Legends, you have regular dragons and then the Elder Dragon at the 35-minute mark. You have Rift Herald, which then becomes Baron at the 20-minute mark. So I definitely like the idea of having it start off as something and then changing into something even more impactful for the late game. I'm really curious to see as to how it's going to balance between having two pretty clear spots for an objective. Are they going to be two drastically different objectives? Is it going to be two things that are very similar? Or if it's even going to, like, how exactly it's going to work? Unfortunately, not privy to that sort of knowledge, but definitely excited to see how things are going to play out.
Well, Roche is a little bit different than Gold Miner, Kraken, and I don't know how the League, Baron and everything works, but Roche spawns as soon as the map loads, and that's really interesting because there's a couple heroes that can take Roshan incredibly early in a game, and those heroes also sometimes can jungle, so your opponent has to keep track of the jungle and that big objective. I think that's pretty cool. I would hope that the objectives out on the map early, and then maybe we can see room for kind of innovation, people finding combos that can take that super early and catch people by surprise. I like the evolving aspect as well. With Roche, basically, I think it's after you take it 2 times. Well, when you kill it, it's gold for your team, but it drops an Aegis of the Immortal, and a player can pick that up. It's an item that brings you back to life after you've been killed. It lasts 5 minutes and then it times out and it goes away. It's gone. But after you've killed Roche 2 times, the 3rd time he's killed, he drops an Aegis of the Immortal and a cheese, stinky cheese. And the cheese can be consumed, heals you for 2,000 health and 2,000 mana instantly. And so one person grabs the cheese, one person grabs the Aegis. It just depends like who on your team needs those things. But I like how it does evolve, kind of like Bacon said.
I wonder how the lore team came up with cheese for the 3rd drop.
I'm not sure Dota was designed with lore in mind.
Oh, okay. Cheese is a great idea then.
Yeah, and you get to give cheese at the international, and the team could take a bite of cheese awkwardly.
Community cheese block.
I think why does Roshan drop cheese now?
It's a good thing. We should.
Oh my goodness! Done searching. First thing I find has a top comment. The question is, why does Roshan drop cheese? And the top comment is because cheese takes ages to make.
Aegis.
Nice.
Oh, God. All right. Well, I would say in terms of what I can share in this regard is that having major objectives to fight over is always very interesting, but it's also more to a means of an end, and that's kind of where we are sticking to as well. So it's not just about the sake of having something to fight over, but it needs to in some way have a heavy impact on the next few minutes of the game, so that it's not something. So some might argue the current state of 3v3 with Kraken. I think people really love Kraken, and she's been a good neutral objective. But I think one of the pain points from a purely like gamer focused perspective is she's not always good to capture. There's moments where arguably you would just not capture her because you'd rather take the 2 turrets you would probably normally get if you would have captured and pushed. You might still only get those 2 turrets and maybe hand over, the gold for killing Kraken in return. So it's not always beneficial. I think one of our goals with 5v5 is to try to make the same decision process happen. Like, we want players to have to determine whether it's a good idea or not to take the objective, but not because taking it means it's bad or it could be negative, but because there's either one or two things maybe better to do. But we still also want to reduce that as well, right? Like, what's the point of having really awesome, really, crazy neutral objectives that teams are going to aspire to take if, people just ignore them? So I would say that we have some exciting stuff, in the works for sure. And as with any game developer, the 5v5 that's introduced in 2018 and the things that we have right out of the gate are, they're not things that we necessarily keep for the next 3 to 5 years, right? Like we talked about, the different ways that the Rashawn works. We talked about Elder Dragons and a bunch of other things that happen in the way Baron works, and these are all things that have changed even somewhat recently. Like Elder Dragon's only been a thing for like a year and a half or so, Bacon, is that right? I mean, it's not been that long, maybe a couple of years if even, but so I'm excited for not just the initial ideas we put out there, but I'm most excited for how everyone reacts to them and how we can continue to develop the game beyond that to be something even better for the future.
Right.
I felt very political there at the end. Vote for me. Your local Vainglory governor.
It's definitely something I agree with, though, with what you're saying about like the game being able to adapt and evolve over time. I mean, League of Legends, like you said, is a great example. They've been changing things consistent. Like every year they have a preseason where I think this year's preseason was like the least drastic change in game wise. It's because they did a complete overhaul to their out of game sort of experience in terms of like runes and masteries that you choose before the game. But like in years past, they've completely changed the jungle. They've changed jungle camps in between each season. They've changed the way Dragon works. Dragon used to be just a single thing that was there from like I think the 6-minute mark was when it spawned, maybe even before then, and it was the same exact thing the entire game long. And then like you said, it was like a year and a half ago or so where they added in the different elemental dragons, then the Elder Dragon, Rift Herald became a thing, and this year even they changed how Rift Herald worked in terms of like capturing the Rift Herald and then releasing it onto the map at a later time. So
took a little page out of Vainglory's book there with the little turret pusher, huh?
Yeah, they did. It also took a page out of
Zuma's book.
Strife.
Oh, here we go.
Strife was another one where you could capture like an objective, and then it spawned like this giant ape that went and pushed down the lane. That was the first game that I had seen kind of do that. Yeah. So it's definitely, games take ideas from other games all the time, and obviously hope to see Vainglory take some of the better ideas from other games and try and implement them. But again, always looking forward to seeing how things change and adapt as time goes on. I don't expect, as much as I am super excited for 5v5, I think it's going to be amazing. I do not expect it to be perfect right out of the gate because nothing ever is. So, I definitely expect there to need to be some tweaks after it gets revealed, and then some drastic changes perhaps down the line as things continue to develop.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing, I guess, about the Vainglory community is the community likes to have their voices heard, and they like to complain about things they don't like. So SCMC, of course, they do their best to listen to the community and see what they may want to change. Obviously, when things, I like it when they stick to their guns and they keep something in there. But yeah, I think the major thing here is that it's not going to be perfect immediately. They've obviously been working on it for a long time. Hopefully by the time it releases, there'll be a lot of great things and it will continue to grow. Crude, do you have one more question? I think we're getting close to the end here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the last questions that I have, I guess, would be, I know as far as League of Legends, I'm not real sure about Dota, but like, when you can queue and you can queue as a certain position. So I'm kind of curious if 5v5 sticks, or like you were saying, Foojee, down the road, if this is a possibility as far as being able to select a role that you want to play, instead of maybe the same person getting stuck in the same position over and over because your teammates don't want to play the carry or the captain role. So I don't know if Humanist and Tasty want to back me or disagree with me on that. But I'll let you guys go first on what your opinion is, and then we'll have Foojee follow up.
So this is actually something that I know SCMC has been looking at, or at least individuals at SCMC have been looking at and toying around with for quite some time. 'Cause I've had discussions with some of the developers about this idea, because I really love the idea of being able to choose your role before queuing up, but there's a lot of intricacies that go along with it that I think a lot of people don't think of initially. Things that I didn't think of initially about it, and obviously one is just the size of the queue and what kind of impact it will have on queue times. Obviously, League of Legends kind of deals with this in the way of having the forced fill, where you might be forced to fill in to have to be queued as a certain role, but then you also have to worry about players that don't go along with it. Like if a player queues up as a carry but gets forced to play into the support role, and they just decide, you know what, I'm just not going to play a support role. Like there's not really a lot of ways that can be having a team be able to work around that becomes an issue. Obviously, you have people being able to mark roles right now in Vainglory, but there's no other real way to communicate. Whereas in League of Legends, just someone decides to say, well, I'm just not going to follow what this role thing says. Everyone can kind of communicate, be like, you know what? If this guy's just going to be a jerk and try and, ruin our gameplay, we'll at least work around it and then just report him at the end of the game. Whereas in Vainglory, you can kind of get stuck in a situation where you can't work around it because you don't know that they're going to do it until it's too late. So that's another one of the things that, thoughts that has to go into it is how you're going to combat people that decide not to play along with the roles that they pick. Queue times being a thing. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, but I do know it's something that at least a few people at SCMC have been looking into.
I'd go one step backwards in the decision making, and to the point where I don't know how it happens in League, but in Dota you have a solo rank and you have a group ranking. I personally don't put a lot of weight in someone's rank unless it's a solo rank. That's just, I had years of that being ingrained into me, where it's like, okay, yeah, I know you're a party of 5 and you guys queue together, and well, maybe I haven't had a group of 5 or 4 to queue with for a while, so like, of course you're going to have naturally easier games that way. So solo versus group ranking, I think that's one thing. And then if you split those apart, then you're talking about what's the player base, how long are queue times, are people going to follow the rules? Like if you queue up for a support role and then whatever. I actually don't like that. I would say personally, I don't like the idea that you're going to tell me how to play the game. Especially when you get into a solo queue situation, because I don't think there's never going to be one right way to play one of these games. And a lot of times, if you are legitimately in a solo queue playing a lot of games and you're a really good player, let's be real, a lot of times your best chance of winning that game is carrying the game. So I think sometimes the biggest thing is like reading your teammates, and sometimes you're going to have to support a little. But if a player wants to come in and buy like one good support item and then just get farm and carry, well, then you should work with them and try to win that way. So I'm not against that at all.
It's my turn now.
Sure.
Yeah,
like it.
You're up, Foojee.
All right. So, couple of things. I would say anything is possible in terms of what we are willing to consider for the health of the game and the community. I think it would be tough to have any sort of indication anytime soon for what people will want to play as, because there is no defined meta. So one of the benefits you have in League of Legends right now is obviously people will go in. So, and perhaps this is why it works more for League than Dota, because the meta is pretty definitive in League of Legends. You obviously can flex to a certain extent what heroes are played where, but people don't like. people don't do like double lane with nobody in jungle and 2 mid, 2 bottom, 1 top. I mean, it's certain skill tiers maybe are in casual, but when people are kind of put to the test and ranked, generally people will come together to achieve greatness because it's what they're looking for. So you can't escape trolls. You can't escape people trying to work the system for themselves, because that's just always going to be the case. But what we can do is we can incentivize people to play better by having better in-game and out of game, but still in-app constructs where individuals are encouraged to play well. So in an environment where maybe you can't always guarantee you're going to get the position you want, you can at least feel special about trying to go for the victory, because maybe that specific game isn't about you playing the way you want to play. It's still just about going forward to a common goal. Now, I know that that's asking a lot, especially in the gaming community, because it's typically you play games because you want to play what you want to play. But I think this is just the element of it being a MOBA. Like, a lot of times I think people forget, because it is a completely multiplayer experience, that this isn't single player. You can't just turn on your Super Nintendo and hop on Samus and start shooting missiles at Metroids, right? Like, this is something where you're going to have to deal with what other people want too. And just because you're not getting what you want doesn't mean someone else should be denied their right or privilege to do what they want. So I think trying to come together and work as a team is always tough in a multiplayer only game. But like I said, anything's possible. We'll certainly listen and kind of get a feel for what the community thinks. And if perhaps we look at a day where people are kind of leaning into this kind of thing, maybe that's what the community wants. I would say we just don't know. And I think people right now may say they want this type of thing, but I don't necessarily know if they really understand what they're asking for yet, because nobody knows what 5v5 is going to be like. So there's no guarantees you may even be the same kind of player in the 5v5 mode as you are today. So a lot of discovery to be done for sure for 2018.
All right, well, I think we pretty much talked about all the questions we had. There's a few left, but you guys have kind of answered them indirectly through other conversation. I don't know if either you three have anything else that you've had thought about throughout this conversation that you want to bring up before we kind of start wrapping this up. Give you one last chance to have another discussion if you want it.
I don't think it's going to lead to a discussion, but I'll just say it because I didn't bring it up before. It's actually pretty important. I think maybe one of the reasons Dota doesn't always have dedicated junglers is because of the way the camps spawn, the mechanic there. Basically, the camps are going to spawn on when the when the minute marker reaches 0-0. If there are no units there, it spawns, and so there's a spawn box that's drawn on the map. Everybody learns that they change it sometimes, but if you can aggro those units and pull them out of that spawn box when the clock ticks over 0-0, it spawns another camp, and then they run back onto their camp, and it's called stacking. So supports run through the jungle, and they can stack big camp sometimes like 4 times, 5 times, and then maybe your mid laner, once he's reached level 7 or something where he can clear those out real nicely and quickly, he'll then go take those, get a big boost, and then your team pushes or something.
Was that intended design, or was that something that you?
I think that was an accident.
Feels like it was.
I really like it. One of the things that I do think was an accident for sure that is really cool is also called pulling, which is some camps are positioned in a way near the top and bottom lanes where you can aggro the camp to follow you at the correct time, where your minions are walking down the lane. Your minions get aggro to that camp and walk into the jungle. Now your opponent's creeps are going to push, minions are going to push underneath your turret, making it easy for you to last hit without being ganked, also denying that wave of experience and gold to your opponent.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Dota has a lot of things that were unintended that became features over the course of time as they were discovered. But it's definitely cool to see developer be able to embrace that and be like, we didn't mean for this to happen this way, but it's kind of cool that it does. So we're just going to keep it there. That's always kind of neat to see. But my kind of last words on it are just, I really want to see what Vainglory does differently in 5 versus other games, because I think that's going to be extremely important, is being able to carve out its own niche and have its own things that make it unique, aside from obviously the obvious difference of being on mobile and having a control scheme unlike any other mobile MOBA. But I think the 5v5 is going to be really important for it to be able to carve out its own niche and have other things that make the game unique and stand out from the other MOBAs on the market.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because my closing point, it's not exactly a foil to what you just said. So here's my thought. I think what we're going to show the public in 2018, and what we will unveil to them at the end of this year, is going to be something special, something quite amazing. The stuff that the team is working on here continues to impress me daily, and to the point to where we are doing some things that I would not have even imagined if someone were to have sat me down like 4 months ago and said, what do you think would really level up the MOBA experience on mobile in Vainglory? There are items we're working on right now that I wouldn't even think were possible. So like the engineer team, the developer team here is doing some pretty magical stuff, and the experience I think people are going to have is you are going to know it's Vainglory. There is a sense about the game and a interaction while you're playing that is still very much intrinsically what Vainglory has always been. But I think that what a lot of people will do is, the first thing is start talking about what's a copy, or, well, why does this look so similar, or X, Y, and Z. So like the way I like to approach this is that, like, if you build a road, you don't just decide one day that you want to take the lanes and swap them, because therefore it might be a cool experience for people, or it might just be different. Because when people get onto that street, they're essentially going to have to relearn once they get onto that road, like, how do I drive down this thing? You don't just put like a turning lane going backwards for the exit you want to get off of just because it looks neat, right? Like, you don't do things just because you think they might be cool. You do a balance of things. You take best practices from other titles that have been literally working hard at this for the better part of a decade, and you figure out, how can we learn from them? What are ways that we can make people feel at home, feel something somewhat familiar, but make it very classic, make it very unique to what Vainglory is? And this is something I think is going to be, it's a bit of balance. Like, we're going to get a lot of new players. We'll have more new players in 2018 than we will have returning players or existing. And there's going to be a lot of people where this might be their first Vainglory experience. What's Vainglory to them will be perhaps 5v5. What's Vainglory to like myself or Humanist or Bacon or you guys will be somewhat of a comparison to the old map, and why we think SCMC did things with the new. So I think my thing is just, don't worry too much about what is or what isn't, or what might have been unique or what's new. It's just going to be what it is. And I think as long as people are having fun, that's really all that matters. Like, we're going to have a lot of really unique stuff in the map. We're also going to have things that people have seen in other MOBAs. It's a 3-lane map. Ta-da!
Right.
That doesn't make it lesser. If anything, it just makes it more familiar. And if you were to ask the large amount of the population, especially overseas in the APAC region, what are the things you want in a MOBA? Like, millions of people are saying 5v5 and 3 lanes. Like, they want what a MOBA has essentially become. And this is a way for us to really take a genre and explode it in mobile, which nobody's really doing that well, right? And I think Vainglory is going to pave the way next year for sure. Like, people will relearn in 2018 what a mobile MOBA can be, and no one else has touched it, not up to this point.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I'm most excited for, is just the fact that, I mean, personally, I've never had the gear to play League of Legends and Dota. I've played League on my MacBook Pro. It is not an enjoyable experience. But having a game like Dota and League that's so much depth that I can play on my phone is going to be fantastic. Which obviously that's why we're talking about this right now, leading up to the hype for Worlds. If you're listening to this and you haven't pre-registered, not quite sure why you haven't. Most people that listen to this are involved in the Vainglory community, but you can do that at 5v5.vainglorygame.com. Make sure you pre-register, maybe get a little founder's badge, be one of the originals. How long have the teams like Renegades been? How much practice will they have under their belt coming up to this showcase match? Do we know that?
I mean,
I don't know.
Not much.
Okay.
So here's what I'll say. There's a lot of things happening that haven't been announced yet with the showcase and kind of unveiling, but we're trying to make sure that everybody will have had some time with it. We're trying to make it somewhat equal, but we're also trying to make the experience more than just about like a competitive showcase of teams that have had like months of practice. Like, it's not really about that as much as it is like kind of introducing the mode to the world, letting them see it visibly for the first time, and then having some great players kind of walk us through that experience. So I think it's gonna be pretty fire. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting. I think that's all we have. I really want to thank you guys for coming on. This was a blast. I learned a lot comparing the other MOBAs of League and Dota. I'm sure the listeners as well. I think the big takeaway is that it's okay if some things are similar. The main thing is that the game's fun, and there's going to be a lot of unique things that Vainglory does put in play. But if you guys would like to sign off, maybe drop your Twitter handle, anything else where people can reach out to you. Humanist, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Tasty and Foojee.
Yo, my name is Humanist. You can follow me at HumanistCast on Twitter. That's the only social media I do, and be prepared for it to get political.
I thought I was about to get a rap from you, and I was so excited.
I know. I was like, oh yeah. Here
to
we
be
go.
like trendy and like accepted in modern society, all you have to do is just like remove words from your sentence, and that just makes you like a demigod. Yo, this is humanist. It's not this. It's just, humanist.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, we know.
All right, so I don't know. I'm gonna follow that one, but yeah, my Twitter handle is just TastyBacon Live. That's also my Twitch handle, but I very rarely stream. I try and stream every so often, but usually doesn't work out. So mostly just on Twitter, and that's probably the best way to follow me, best way to contact me. If you ever have any questions for me on anything Vainglory or life related, feel free to reach out. I usually try and respond to just about everyone. But yeah.
DMs are open.
But there are some that
DMs are open. Feel free to slide on in.
Slide in. So you can follow me, I guess, on Twitter as well at the Foojee. I'm also very open to anyone connecting with me to ask any questions, concerns, if you just want to talk about the landscape of Vainglory or esports and gaming in general. I really just do love these kinds of chats. And I mean, heck, that's how this podcast came together today. Just a quick little Twitter DM made all the things happen.
Yes.
So definitely do that. And of course, you can catch me from time to time on some Vainglory related streams. I might be doing a little casting at Worlds.
Yes.
Here we go.
No, so like this might be a thing that goes down. So I do try to still involve myself pretty heavily where I can with things people are familiar with, and hopefully in 2018 I can make myself a bit more present for the larger community. But yeah, other than that, you know what it is.
Yeah, you can follow us, of course, at TFR_esports, Foojee, I did want to complain to you that I do not like SCMC because they have taken away Shin Kaigen and you from the Vainglory community. Who that's how I learned Vainglory in the first place, was from watching you guys. And unfortunately, you guys are so busy now, I don't get to see you guys stream anymore. So hopefully, they don't continue taking away some of the good streamers out there.
I thought that was about to get serious for a second. I was like,
well, here's how I'd like to say, right? Like people like Bao and myself, or excuse me, Shin Kaigen, most people know him as,
right.
We were able to affect thousands of people, perhaps in our old positions, but now we can impact millions, right?
True.
So it's a bigger task at hand.
Fair enough.
I initially thought that was going to be, I'd like to complain that SCMC took away the question mark ping.
Oh, no, I would never. No, I would never.
I tried really hard, actually, when we were doing the 5v5 stuff to just get us to subtly just like put a question mark, like the question mark ping as a thing we could drop on the telestrator and just use it in a couple of the segments, but never actually comment on it, and just see if like it would start like this massive like train of people thinking that the question mark ping was coming back for 5v5, but
yikes,
that idea got shot down.
Chaos.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to hopefully see/hear all of you at Worlds once again, December 14th. Keep building the hype. The bracket challenge is out. We will be doing more interviews in the future with other community guests such as B-Red from Shadow of the Vein, Brutal Turtle from Echo Fox, and others. So keep a lookout on that. But that is all we have. Thanks again, guys. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks for tuning in to Time for Rolling. If you liked what you heard, please leave a review on iTunes or Google Play Music and subscribe for weekly episodes. Follow us on Twitter at Time for Rolling and at TFR_esports. Until next week for another edition of
Time for rolling.